And a very good evening to welcome to the scene here in Portsmouth. In front of us we have the eastern end of the Solent spread out before us. A White Link catamaran coming in right at the front of our picture here. And behind that in the distance, just outside off Ryde on the Isle of Wight, is the flagship of the Royal Navy, HMS Queen Elizabeth. Now, unusually, she's coming in from a westerly direction. That's because earlier on today, she transited through us, in front of us as we are here, and went all the way down to Cowes on the Isle of Wight. And we'll have more on what she was doing there in a little while. But now you see her making her way along the coast of the Isle of Wight and gradually beginning now to turn inwards. Beautiful day it's been here on the south coast for the ship and the ship's company, and now the light's starting to fade, a haze on the water in front of us, and you can see the tugs escorting her all the way in, led as ever by the SD Tempest, a very special tug that was built specifically for this purpose. So, what are we doing here today? And let me just say, I'm Tim Cooper and welcome along to this special broadcast from BFBS Forces News, which is going out on our YouTube platform, on Facebook, and indeed on BFBS television overseas. So wherever you're watching, thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening. We're here to welcome back HMS Queen Elizabeth. She's been away for 4 months at Rosyth in Scotland for a period of unscheduled repairs. Let's rewind and go back to February this year. She was meant to be sending off on deployment, but a problem emerged just hours before she was due to leave. In fact, a couple of days before she was due to leave, I was invited on board to meet the captain, interview the captain and see members of the crew. Much excitement, and then we were waiting for her to come out, and sadly that didn't happen because there was a problem with her propeller shaft coupling. That was discovered as part of routine maintenance just before she was about to leave, so she couldn't go, and her place was taken at less than a week's notice, which was a tremendous effort by her sister ship HMS Prince of Wales. So she's been in Scotland at Rosyth for 4 months, and the MOD have told us that the ship actually came out of that period more quickly than initially forecast from repairs, and that work for her shaft lines to be repaired. And for the last 7 days she's been out at sea going through a series of rigorous trials, the ship working itself up and the crew getting back into the swing of things, and of course all the work that's been done on her propeller shaft lines, a full testing process there for that work to be seen to be absolutely functioning as it should have been. So 4 months on, after that hiatus, the ship is coming back, and this is incredibly significant for the Royal Navy because it means that both aircraft carriers are back here in Portsmouth and ready to go onto their scheduled deployments as and when that may be. You'll probably remember the sister ship of HMS Queen Elizabeth, HMS Prince of Wales, had a similar issue with propeller coupling and set off on deployment actually, but broke down off the southern coast of the Isle of Wight and had to go through a similar process of being towed back ignominiously here into Portsmouth and off up to Rosyth for repairs. I'm absolutely certain that members of the Royal Navy's senior echelons who are probably tuning in tonight to watch this will be hoping that those problems with the shaft are in the past, now a part of history, and that they can move on with carrier operations. So, we can see very clearly now that the ship is turning. You'd think she'd just be able to come straight in from where we first picked her up off Ryde, but no, there's a very, very clear procedure for entering and leaving port. Number one, the tide has to be at its highest, which it is in about 4 minutes' time, 8 minutes past 8 this evening. Then the ship has to line itself up and come in from the direction of Outer Spit Buoy, OSB it's called on shipping charts, and she will be there and make her way in between the red and green buoys there. That's the shipping lane, and if you can see the yellow posts, yellow at the base, white on top, that is part of the guidance system for the carrier to come in as well. So whichever direction she comes from, she will always come in to port in exactly the same way. This is BFBS Forces News and Tim Cooper in Portsmouth as the ship turns now and the last of the day's sunshine illuminates the superstructure of the 65,000 tonne aircraft carrier. Now, if you're just joining us, I mentioned right at the start of this broadcast that HMS Queen Elizabeth has had a very special day out today. It is Cowes Week, and for the uninitiated, that is the major yachting regatta here on the south coast, which takes place at Cowes in the Isle of Wight. And earlier on today, HMS Queen Elizabeth went down to Cowes, moored up outside Cowes Harbour, and there was an exchange of fire. Nothing hostile, I assure you, but cannons were fired from the carrier and indeed from the Isle of Wight, from the Royal Yacht Squadron to be specific, which is a very, very posh yacht club right in the mouth of Cowes Harbour, which has a number of brass cannon lined up outside the clubhouse, and they're used to start the races at Cowes Week. So a nice tradition there. The Royal Navy has long associations with Cowes Week, as indeed does the royal family, and in years gone by the Royal Yacht Britannia was always there, until she was decommissioned of course, but always there before that, moored outside Cowes, and more often than not His Royal Highness Prince Philip would be on board and spend a lot of time watching the racing there. So wonderful that that tradition is still being maintained today, with HMS Queen Elizabeth going to say hello, and indeed HMS Tyne is a guard ship for Cowes Week this year and is on station outside Cowes, again keeping that wonderful tradition going. So the ship is just going behind Spitbank Fort. That's the granite structure you can see there with a little red and white lighthouse on its top, and that was built in the 1860s at the order of then Prime Minister of Great Britain, Lord Palmerston. There's a chain of them along here and a load of forts on land as well. They were built to defend us from the French, but by the time they were finished, the French had other things to occupy themselves, so didn't try and invade, and so they've been there ever since. They were used during the First and Second World Wars, and up until recently Spitbank Fort was a hotel, but I believe it sold quite recently. It's fascinating if you ever get the chance to go out there. I've been out there a couple of times. It's a wonderful part of living history. There are 4 forts in Solent. There's Spitbank, Horsehands, No Man's Land, and a much smaller fort over at St Helens on the Isle of Wight, where twice a year, if you're brave, stroke foolhardy, you can walk the fort, do the fort walk. You can walk out to St Helens Fort, walk right around it and come back and only get a little bit wet. But whatever you do, don't try and drive, because I've seen Range Rovers get stuck and sink. I'm rambling, going away at a tangent, but I'm sure it's absolutely fascinating. There we go, she's just cleared Spitbank Fort now, and we're getting a much clearer picture of HMS Queen Elizabeth. The haze has dissipated there. Let's widen our shot out and have a little look around at the vast numbers of people that have come out to see HMS Queen Elizabeth home. Now, you'd expect that for a long deployment, and yes, the ship's been away and the ship's company have been away doing things, but not in the traditional sense. They have been in Scotland, basically. So I was wondering whether we'd get the usual crowds that we tend to get here in Portsmouth, but as ever we have done, and it's wonderful to see some family members, all sorts of people there, young people who are interested in going in the Royal Marines. One of them up there I was chatting to earlier is an avid BFBS Forces News viewer, which is great to see. But yeah, look at it, hundreds of people all the way along here in Old Portsmouth, disappearing into the distance, on the ramparts, on the pier. And I tell you what, it's amazing to be here, not just to see the ship, but after a day where temperatures hit over 30 degrees centigrade here on the south coast, it's beautiful to be by the sea with that breeze coming in, cooling us all down after a hot and sticky day. Of course, I didn't get out to enjoy that today. I was far too busy preparing for this. Yes, I do prepare, Mark. Don't look at me like that. Mark is my cameraman who's bringing you these pictures on all of our platforms on BFBS Forces News. Now, one thing I should just let you know about, and you may have seen it on our social media pages over the last few days, is that we have a new website, which is forcesnews.com. So if you're any interest in the military whatever, be it from history right through to modern day operations, all 3 services, and international militaries as well, why not check out forcesnews.com. There's loads and loads of good stuff there. And on the website at the moment is a massive fact file all about HMS Queen Elizabeth. So fill your boots with all that geeky information about the flagship of the Royal Navy. Well, the good news is, as you can see, the carrier is coming round to point almost directly towards us. A few more degrees to go, and then she will begin that journey in. The harbour has, as ever, with carrier transits being closed to all shipping, and there are police launches around just making sure people keep out of the way. There was a jet ski here a minute ago, but he's been shepherded inside the harbour because they are very, very big vessels. An obvious thing to say, I know, but the harbour mouth isn't that big. There's plenty of room, but it needs to be done carefully, and there can't be any distractions. There's no chance for the carrier to stop if something gets in the way. Or even manoeuvre, so it needs to be kept clear for safety reasons of the carrier, of course, and indeed other water users too. So what have the ship's company been getting up to during that 4-month period in Rosyth when their ship was being repaired? Well, it's been an opportunity, really. They've been working closely with the Royal Air Force P-8 Maritime Patrol aircraft, which comes out of RAF Lossiemouth, and they've been doing operations with that, so communicating between the carrier and the P-8, which will be interesting. And also, there was some fine weather apparently in the North Sea, and maintenance work was carried out on the upper deck. Now, it's been a joint effort between the Royal Navy Defence Equipment and Support and Babcock to get this all fixed, and as I mentioned a little earlier on, it has happened at a quicker pace than the Royal Navy were initially thinking. The commanding officer of HMS Queen Elizabeth, Captain Will King, has said in a statement issued that whilst no warship wants to find itself spending unscheduled time out of the water, I am enormously proud of the work that has gone on in Rosyth. Everybody on board is looking forward to getting back to sea, where we belong, and picking up a busy programme in the autumn. And Commander Alex Davis, the head of Marine Engineering Department on board the ship, said an enormous amount of work's taken place over the last few months to get us to this point. This is at the larger end of the scale for Royal Navy Marine Engineering, and it's taken a really effective team effort from our own engineers, Defence Equipment Support and our industry partners to return to sea. The ship was also used as a platform for a number of visits during her time in Rosyth. Visits from the heads of the Swedish and Chilean navies, and the senior Royal Navy and British Army officers based in Scotland also came aboard the ship during her time alongside in Rosyth. And in addition to all of that, a team from Fleet Operational Standards and Training, FOST, provided a week of firefighting and damage control training for the entire ship. So it's not been an idle time at all, and many sailors indeed have taken part in a whole wide range of activities whilst they've been away, from sports and adventurous training packages, including trips to the Naval Outdoor Centre in Bavaria in Germany, and as I alluded to earlier, a lot of small-scale maintenance and husbandry projects, including a full new coat of paint for the hull and upper deck. So as she gets closer, I'd like you to look at that new coat of paint and inspect it and make sure everything looks absolutely ship-shape. Also, whilst in Scotland, the ship took the opportunity to strengthen ties with their affiliated city of Edinburgh, just across the Firth of Forth from Rosyth, and various civic dignitaries, officials and organisations were hosted on board. And indeed, the two of the city's universities, I should say, provided learning and development opportunities for sailors, and the ship's rugby team even participated in the annual Edinburgh Rugby Sevens tournament. And I don't know about you, but I've certainly been enjoying the Rugby Sevens action that's been taking place in the Olympics last few days. Some really exciting play there going on. Well, hopefully you're enjoying the pictures we're bringing you. Any moment now, she should be beginning to make her way a lot closer to us, I hope. You're with Forces News on our YouTube and Facebook streams, and I hope you're liking what we're seeing here today. Portsmouth is arguably the home of the Royal Navy. Those of us that live near Portsmouth certainly feel that, although Devonport always says, well, what about us? and Chatham probably would have had a word back in the day. But yeah, it is a naval city, and it's an island city, which many people don't know. It is completely surrounded by water, and there are only 3 routes on and off the island, so it is very much in tune with the maritime nature. Let's Mark now have a look at the police launch that's just coming in front of us here. They're keeping everybody safe. There's a lot of swimmers in the water today, so I think they've just been inland a little bit, taking the opportunity to warn the swimmers not to come out too far. Now that may seem a bit incongruous, it's a big bit of sea we're looking at here, but when we get much closer, it is only a couple of 100 yards offshore, and you can be right into that channel and right in the way of the ship. And swimmer versus carrier, I'm afraid there's only one outcome to that. So there we are, police launches out in the Solent and also in Portsmouth Harbour as well. And there's always a police presence in the harbour when the carriers are in, always in their rigid inflatable boats, making sure everything is fine and ensuring that nothing can go wrong with the ship. And there's another launch that we're seeing now just by Fort Blockhouse. That's the building there in the background. And again, making sure the channel is clear. There are 2 sort of channels really coming out here. There's a small boat channel, which is pretty much where that rib is, and then the main shipping channel as well. Both of those channels are now closed to everything, apart from the police vessels, the pilot vessel, the tugs, and the carrier. Light beginning to fade now on the Solent as we pan across Ryde, looking gloomy in the mist over there. St Thomas's Church, the big spire you can see. Tracking along now. This is a test of my Isle of Wight knowledge. In the distance there we've got Seaview, St Helens, Bembridge, can't see them at all. Gloomy in the mist. Once more we go past Spitbank Fort and see the carrier now much, much closer to us. She's completely in the right alignment and heading our way. And it will just now be a matter of 5 minutes or so before she is on top of us, towering above us and coming into the harbour. So what are the key facts and figures of HMS Queen Elizabeth? Well, the project to build both Queen Elizabeth and sister ship HMS Prince of Wales cost the country more than £6 billion. The aircraft carrier weighs 65,000 tonnes and has got a top speed of 35 knots. She could carry up to 75 aircraft with a maximum capacity of 36 F-35B Lightning II jets. It's more likely though that the carriers will have up to 24 Lightning jets on board for operational purposes. Flight deck is 280 metres long, 70 metres wide. Enough space, it says, for 3 football pitches. The ship is the second in the Royal Navy to be named HMS Queen Elizabeth. There's a crew of about 700, increasing to 1,600 when a full complement of jets and helicopters are embarked. We're getting into the realms of weird and wonderful figures now. There are 364,000 metres of pipes on board the ship. I bet you wanted to know that. You can bore your friends at pub quizzes with that one. And both HMS Queen Elizabeth and HMS Prince of Wales keep 45 days worth of food in their stores. So they can be at sea for 45 days and everyone is fed. And this is my favourite fact for you. The entire ship's company of 700 can be served a meal within 90 minutes. And when they're at action stations, that figure falls down to 45 minutes. There are a number of galleys on board. Isn't that just amazing? 700 people fed in 45 minutes. Whenever I've been on board Royal Navy ships, the people I have the most sympathy for and the most admiration for are the chefs. Sympathy because they're below decks, the thing's rolling around, it's hot, and they're cooking hundreds and hundreds of meals and they can't see outside. Admiration because they do that every single day, at least 3 times a day, and they produce some fantastic food. Mark is getting his lovely pictures. We've both been on many ships over the years, and they do amazing food and cater for all dietary requirements. This is turning into a recruiting film, isn't it? But no, fantastic effort to see, and it's always worth taking a look in the ship's quarters. Chef's quarters, not chef's quarters, kitchen, that's the word I'm looking for. Galley, that's an even better one, because that's actually the right word. And many ships will use the diverse nature of their crews, people from the Caribbean, from an Indian background, and they will utilise the wonderful flavours and textures of food that can come in from that knowledge. And I once attended a wonderful Caribbean night on board one ship, which was superbly cooked by one of the chefs. So if you're wondering who this fool wittering away is, my name is Tim Cooper, and you're with BFBS Forces News on Facebook and YouTube. And making stately progress is HMS Queen Elizabeth. Pretty much now level with Clarence Pier, which is the pier just at the far end of Southsea Common, and just moments away now from joining us here from our vantage point at the Round Tower in Old Portsmouth. There are 2 islands on this class of carrier, and here's a fascinating fact: the UK has had 16 different classes of carrier down the years, from 1 to 10 variants. 1 to 10 in numerical terms of those. But of course there are 2 Queen Elizabeth class carriers, this one and HMS Prince of Wales. And my favourite fact whenever I'm talking about carriers is that this is the flagship of the Royal Navy, but not the biggest ship in the Royal Navy. Now everyone argues this point, but I've had it from official naval people that HMS Prince of Wales is a metre, couple of metres maybe, longer due to a couple of tweaks in the design. So officially HMS Prince of Wales is the biggest ship in the Royal Navy. HMS Queen Elizabeth is a teeny bit shorter. So there's another fact as well. Hope you're enjoying the programme, wherever you're watching from. Put a comment on the feed and I'll give some shout outs if I can make that work. Mike Robinson says, welcome home to HMS Queen Elizabeth. Thank you, Mike, for that. Now, it'll be a busy time once they get back into Portsmouth. They will certainly be preparing for operations this autumn, where they'll be heading out again. And it has been a remarkable success story of the carrier programme, the operations that the carriers have been involved with. We've seen Westland, a couple of iterations of that with carrier presence there, and we also saw HMS Prince of Wales, HMS Queen Elizabeth I should say, take part in a significant NATO exercise where for the first time she became the command ship of the NATO exercise. So a very powerful message sent out to Britain's NATO allies of the Royal Navy's abilities and indeed intent. Moments to go now and the ship will be alongside. It's not the triumphant homecoming of a long deployment overseas. We don't see members of the ship's company lining the ship's deck in what they call Procedure Alpha. That's where they stand around the, in this case, 4-acre flight deck and get the chance to see family members who may have come down to watch them come in today. This is a homecoming from an unscheduled, unexpected, and let's face it, a deployment, if you like, a trip to be mended that no one wanted. But it happened, and it has been successfully rectified, the fault. And the result is that she's now back here in Portsmouth, and this 4-month period is at an end. Sorry, I was sidetracked then because I was listening into some of the conversations that are going on around me and hearing my own name taken in vain. It's wonderful. Many members of the people here are getting in touch with their loved ones on board the ship, even as I speak to you now, which is great to see. And we got phones out and we got people taking pictures, and it really is very good indeed. As I say, there must be thousands of people here in Portsmouth, and there's also a lot over in Gosport side as well. I'm being shown a phone of a chap with curly hair who's waving at me. Hello there, it's Tim Cooper here from BFBS Forces News. Welcome back. And I'm seeing pictures from on board the ship, which is lovely to see, and some of the guys down looking out of the hangar, isn't it there? Thank you for that, that's cool. I've got a special sneak peek on board, but we'll be able to show you that in a minute's time because that shot will be with us here. Tug at the front is SD Tempest, the most powerful boat I've ever been on, I think, and it has a Captain Kirk Star Trek style seat where you can literally control it with the joystick, and it's terrifying, and it goes forwards, backwards, left and right as quickly in each direction and at the touch of a button. Really powerful piece of kit, and it was specially built, as I mentioned right at the start of this broadcast, to enable this carrier transit to take place. She is that powerful, and when we don't have Tempest here, they have to get another tug in from elsewhere because periodically Tempest will need some maintenance work, what have you, but she is right at the heart of it now. We're getting cheers from the spectators, and we can see on the bridge wing of the ship crew members there just on the left hand side of the forward island waving in. As you can see, there's not a breath of breeze here today now. The flag's lying down flat on the ship. There we go. I can see a hat being waved. Fantastic. There we go. It's only when you get this close to the carriers that you realise that they are absolutely vast and impressive in every way, shape or form. I'm going to ask Mark in just a moment to, once we get view of it, to focus in on some of the sailors who are looking out of the hangar, and they'll all give us a wave. They've been primed to give us a wave. We've got some sailors at the front there. And let's just look into the hangar area now, where we've got a lot of the ship's company who are all there waving. The lady next to me is waving to her partner who's inside, and that sailor's mother is watching this live stream. So congratulations if you are able to see any of your loved ones on this. What lovely scenes. All the families here waving the ship's company home. And the second window of observation onto the hangar again. More sailors there, all giving us a fantastic wave. And the new coat of paint really does look very slick indeed. A new coat of paint for the superstructure during her time in Rosyth. And right at the stern of the ship, we have 4 of the ship's company there, and a couple of little sailors who found a little hole to poke their heads out of, which is absolutely fantastic. They're pleased to be home. The friends and family are pleased to have them back. And the city of Portsmouth once again has come out in force to say, welcome home, HMS Queen Elizabeth, a flagship of the Royal Navy, back where she belongs, in her home port once more. For much more on the Royal Navy, go to forcesnews.com, or indeed follow us right across all of our social media platforms: Instagram, TikTok, X, other ones I've forgotten, and follow us as well on YouTube. We've got loads of great content about the Royal Navy. Thanks so much for watching this as the sun sets over Gosport and the carrier makes her way into Portsmouth Harbour. It has been a special day, and we thank you very much indeed for joining us here on BFBS Forces News. From Mark Hearn, who's filmed this, and from me, Tim Cooper, thank you so much for watching, and we'll wish you a very good night.